Welcome, bienvenue. Welcome once again to the IPSA Kind of Magic Show, a show that's dedicated to promoting the values held within the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents. I got there! As ever, I'm joined by the current chairman, Hamish McClay, of a company called Search Convey, a specialist search agency, and of course, Jackie Dyson, latterly of the Yorkshire Search Agency, originally an IPSA founder member, or close to founder. Were you a founder member, Jackie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now an ongoing consultant. It turns out, as ever, she knows more than us. And we're going to be talking today about the tumult that ensued about the new TA6 and TA7 forms. But before anything else, Hamish McClay, would you get us going, please?
Right. What I thought it would be an idea to get things in perspective as far as members are concerned, because we know that we have many members of IPSA who actually sort of join in and are listening there in the background, or will actually listen to the recording. But we also know there are sort of friends of IPSA and other people who would like to know what's going on inside the IPSA, our organisation that is actually well known for having, if you like, local members who are carrying out the local authority searches on behalf of vast numbers of conveyances throughout the country. Now, what is happening, and the reason I mentioned the TA6 and the TA7 form, now I haven't actually read through these forms, and by and large I don't know much about them, although I did help one of our clients many years ago, but actually by looking into it. But there are three forms which are actually sort of used within conveyancing: TA6, TA7, and the TA10. The TA10 forms more to do with content, but a lot of the onus is actually put on the seller when they want to sell their property. That's what goes into a TA6 form and a TA7 form. And many conveyancing solicitors are going to, within law, when we get to March next year, they're going to have to integrate these forms within their conveyancing work. Now, what happens, we had a shambles a couple of years back where the national standards people tripped over the Law Society, because the Law Society hadn't discussed it with enough of the lawyers to figure out what was material information. So we speak about material information. And what we're involved with as IPSA members is providing information material to their purchase, or to the purchase of properties. So it's material to the purchase of properties. That's why it's called material information. Now, there is a lot of information held by Land Registry and elsewhere, which is construed to be information of this particular sort of nature. But there's also content within the local authority searches. And many of us will remember back to home information packs. The whole concept of home information packs was to get some of this information, which was material to purchase, to get as much of that as early as we could within the process to stop any hold-ups. And that's the direction we're going in. So it's really this particular warning for, if you like, both IPSA members and those who are not members of the organisation, to actually start looking at how we can help our clients most effectively. And really, it's to look possibly, whilst it'll be property lawyers, of course, who are looking for this information, conveyancers themselves, the whole group of conveyancers, are going to require this information at some stage. Now, the thing is, I haven't looked at these forms of late, but a certain person who was in attendance this morning, it's no surprise, I suppose, but Jackie did actually have a little look into the form, so she can perhaps explain briefly, not to worry too much, members, because we don't need to know. However, if she speaks about it sort of briefly, we can then speak about the advantages and what we can do as members of our organisation to support our clients.
Jackie, welcome to the show. When I first saw the mention of TA6, TA7 forms, I thought something to do with the Territorial Army. I assume it's not. Would you please educate her?
Well, right. Well, I didn't know what they were this morning, so I had But like everything else, when you buy and sell a house, you are given these forms to fill in. You don't look at what they are. So when I looked at the 2 forms, I understood totally what they are. And we all have to fill these in when we move house or put a house up for sale. The TA6 is, it actually comes into force on the 30th of March next year, but the forms are actually available from the 13th of this month. So solicitors and conveyancers can actually start using them now if they wish to, but they have to use them as from the 30th of March next year. Now, the TA6 is the one that we all have to fill in when we put a property up for sale. And it asks you information such as your central heating, your double glazing. But then it asks you questions about your boundaries of your properties and stuff like this. The TA7 is leasehold information. Which I didn't take very much of a look at because obviously that is a limited one that only people with leasehold properties will have to fill in. People that have freehold properties will not have to fill them in. Now, Hamish said about the size of the TA6 form. Well, it's actually only been condensed down to 20 pages. Yeah. So if it was 30 down to 22, it's now down to 20. And to be honest, a lot of the information. One, if you give this to somebody putting the house on the market, it's going to take them a while to fill it in. Because, yes, we know whether we pay Yorkshire Water, a water bill, but do we know if it's served by a treatment plant? Do we know if it's surface water? It will say on your bill, but you've got to go and find that information. So, to me, the question should be asked, are you connected to the mains water system? The answer is yes. That's all you need, because then the purchaser will then do a water search that will then tell them all the information they wish to need. So to me, a lot of the information is being repeated. Some people don't know if their property is listed. They don't know if the conservation area. They might have been informed by letter by the council to say, yes, you are going into a conservation area, took one look at it and thrown it in the recycling, and then forgotten about it. So they're going to have to do this research to be able to give this conveyancer this information. Oh, yeah, oh, great, I've got the form, but I'm off on holiday for 5 weeks. It's the winter. I'm on holiday. So therefore, I'm looking at this and thinking, the amount of information they're requesting, yes, it's basic, but it does go into it in such a way. Is this helping to slow up the conveyancing process? And a lot of the information will be doubled up on. Now, that's what we're trying to stop, is the doubling up of information, because I look at the form and I'm asked questions. Is there any boundary disputes? Nah. I'll tick that as a no. But I'm having bother with my next door neighbour about he's nicked 12 inches of my land. Are people going to be honest? You know, and there are scrupulous people out there, and they might not be honest. They might not say about I've got a neighbour across the road who's had disputes with one of her neighbours about her. Then when they put a new fence up, they stole 6 inches of her land. So, you know, are you going to be honest about it? Are you going to admit that you're in dispute with a neighbour when you want to sell your house? No, you're not. You're not going to be honest. So I'm looking at this 20-page information that, yes, gives up good front information, but it's doubling up on what's in the local search. And as I say, why should the seller provide a lot of that when it should be the buyer that wants the honest answer?
I'm going to ask you a question, Jackie, and it's a wet finger in the air job, so I'm afraid you're not going to be able to give an exact one. What proportion do you think of duplication there is in that form to the search work that, for instance, you guys do anyway?
I would say nearly 50%.
Oh, my giddy aunt. So we've got a 20-page form, which is onerous anyway. It's asking for extra information, which would only come up in the search at any rate. Oh, my
yeah, and of
God.
course, with that search, you will get the honest answer, because it's the buyer that wants the honest answers. So right. You will get the honest answers as the buyer. where a seller might have put up an extension and said, yes, it's got building regulations information. Of course it has. But then you check and you think, no, according to this local search, it's never had building regulations. Did it need building regulations permission at that time? Yeah. Majority of extensions do need building regulations. They don't possibly need planning, but I would say 90% of extensions need building regs information. So you're going to say, oh, I'm going to fib about this. They're not going to find out, are they? They're going to believe what I've put in there until the search is done. So I'm looking at, I would say it's between 40 and 50% of the information that's required on this is doubled up with the information that I feel that the buyer should be obtaining, because they want to know the truth.
So when the form was being constructed, would you agree that there just wasn't enough consultation with proper search agents to find out what was going to be doubled? Because it seems like an inordinate waste of everyone's time. And as you say, will necessarily slow down the whole process.
Yes, it could do, because, my daughter's just bought a house on the market. And she's off on holiday for 2 weeks. I don't know whether she's filled this form in or what, or whatever. She has sold it, but she would have had to have filled these forms in. She will probably come back to me and ask me a lot of the history anyway, because,
hers was a flat.
No. She actually rented it for several years, and then when the mortgage rates had gone up,
was there a lease on it, or was there?
No, there was a leasehold on it, but that's being sorted out. They purchased the property, but the leasehold is being bought, because they had to find the owner of the leasehold, which took them well over a year.
That's ridiculous.
Well over a year to find the owner, because he disappeared off the face of the earth. All they knew was his name.
Down the back of the sofa. That's where I find everything.
Yeah. So to me, is this TA6? I haven't looked at the leasehold information, because I just thought, well, that will only affect a minority on the market. But this TA6, when they said it's been streamlined, I just started laughing, because if from down to 20 pages.
I would love to know what they cut out to get it this far.
Well, yeah, so would I actually. I couldn't find an old TA6 form. I was looking for it, but now it's
got one. I'll ask her.
Yeah,
Hamish, it seems to me that perhaps the direction was a good idea. Information is always useful, but if there's not joined up thinking, if they aren't asking organizations like yourselves, then you're going to end up hopelessly duplicating each other. And let's face it, you guys are much quicker and know where to find information. The common or garden householder doesn't. So there's necessarily going to be a metabolic slowdown before you even get as far as you.
Well, we come back to, and I think there's a great advantage here in so much listening to somebody like sort of Wendy Gibson, one of our sort of colleagues who comes on to the other podcast we speak about, who helps first-time buyers. Because when we sort of think about it now, any of us who are buying properties, we're not moving that often. And unless we're investors, we don't know so much about the process. So it's all sort of quite new. And so often, those poor souls that are buying it, they don't know what they're letting themselves in for. So if you, first of all, you batter them over the head with a load of forms, and they go, oh, God, Gordon Bennett, and they sort of fill in these particular sort of forms. And then all of a sudden, having done that and just sort of recovering from that several weeks later, they get a series of other forms from their solicitor saying, look, we need to gather this information. We might want a slightly different form, or there might be other certain things that we need. And we need all of these searches to find out the information that you weren't able to reveal when the person who was selling the property gave you information. So it's the buyer that needs to be concerned, because the buyer is the one at risk. They're buying into a new venture. The person that lives there, I was going to say safe as houses, because they're in the house. They aren't having to take that step. They might be taking a step elsewhere, So they'll have had to go through the same process themselves. So there is a switch here. There's a bias. Are we getting the right information? Now, one of the great things about it, when you look at the information that comes through, some of the information that like Jackie's speaking about, or a lot of the information, to be perfectly honest, if you get the up-to-date information from Land Registry about the title plan and the title register, if you get the information through from the environmental people who get an environmental search, if you get a drainage and water search, and you get the local authority search, you have got much more information which can be relied upon from these people than actually sort of appears from somebody, because people don't mislead intentionally, although there are a few. Let's assume let's assume that people have been direct about it and they put all that information down. Well, for starters, you may not think you have got a boundary dispute, but the plan that you've received from Land Registry, you can't guarantee is actually accurate. You cannot guarantee those particular lines drawn on the plan by Land Registry do actually reveal the exact position of your property. And this, in fact, has led to a tremendous dispute, particularly at the time of selling property or when somebody new moves in and sticks a fence up. I made that mistake myself some 40 years ago. Put up my first property, put up the fence. You can't put that up. Right. We resolved the dispute, but I had to give away some land and because of it. But nobody told me, and it wasn't obvious, and the solicitor didn't explain it. You get good.
We have a comment from Christine, friend of the show. There's already a lot of advances made whereby the seller will only need to complete a few key fields on these forms, and the rest will be auto-populated from the results of services like yours, sir. And so the important information comes from those with factual information expert knowledge. Great. The problem is now we have the material information must be available from day one on the portals, or agents can be heavily fined. And so the seller has to provide it up front, which is horrible.
Well, there's a lot. But I should mention about that. There are the two areas. I mean, we are advancing as members of IPSA. What Jackie and I try to do, along with the other board, the members of the board, we look to try and find people we can engage with. And we had Silas J. Lees on just a couple of weeks back, explaining about an all-encompassing way of achieving this through his organisation called Wigwam. But we're also working with, there's a character called Nigel Wally, who's also a friend of IPSA. And what he's championing the idea of a logbook. So whether you call it a logbook, a pocket, a bucket, if you've got somewhere which contains all of this information. Now, we are making this available to all of the members of IPSA. And so, if you like, our membership can make use of this to support their clients. So it's about, so well done, Christy. I'm glad she reminded me about certain things going on in the background, which had sort of gone straight over the top of my head, because we were speaking about, and I think that's a very, very important factor, by going through the type of route that Chris was speaking about. Really, you're saving yourself so much time, so much energy, and we're getting that information accurate. And as sort of Jackie said, if you try to wade through those, how many pages is it now, Jackie?
20. And I got so far along and I just got fed up because I just thought this is ridiculous.
Yeah, they just want to beat you to death with it, I think.
When I actually checked, I went down the list of forms that there is, the TA forms. There's actually 8 forms, different TA forms to be completed and looked at. And you just, these conveyancers, their minds must be so boggled. And I bet they sit and look and think, oh, for God's sake, another form to fill in. Are we asking too much information, or are we not asking the relevant information? And that's what is needed, is to ask what is the relevant information and what is the irrelevant information that can be found at a later date, such as with your water search, etc., etc.
the characteristics of IPSA that make it most attractive, from my perspective, is that it provides the best of breed results. So rather than everything, all things to all men and women, which this appears to be, you get the boiled down, concentrated, relevant information. And this is where this is going to be a pain in the tuchus, because it seems to be asking for everything and the kitchen sink. This brings me to the point where I need to thank you, Hamish McClay, for having set this up, Jackie Dawson for being our returning visitor.
Dyson.
What did I call you?
Dawson.
Jackie Dyson. I apologize. Jackie, British vacuum cleaner. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much for your astute knowledge. Thank you, Christine, for that relevant information to make sure that we realize just what's coming around the corner. And to you watching, we do this every week to raise the spectre of what may be happening within conveyancing. I suggest you take notice and do your own research and employ those critical thinking skills that we know you have. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and try and look after that mental health. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.